Morning. The January 27th, 2021 meeting of Halliburton County Council is now in session. Warden Liz Danielson presiding.
Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, I just thought I'd say a couple of words about the Roma conference that some of us just came through. All things considered, it was an excellent format. It's got to be a challenge to deliver a conference in that way, and I think they did fairly well. The emphasis was, as you might expect, completely on broadband. There was, I don't know how much progress we made in that regard, but at least there was a lot of emphasis placed on broadband. The Warden's Caucus presented made a number of delegations, one to the multi-ministers, and the emphasis on broadband, long-term care, housing, and municipal recovery from the pandemic. And all of them were extremely well received. I was really impressed with the reception we got from all of the ministers. Councillor DeVolen and I made our presentation to MOECP on behalf of the county on blue-green algae. And I think that was very well received too. I think we can look forward to hearing back from them on that. Other than that, the Warden's Caucus will be setting their priorities for the year in March. So if any of you have any thoughts, I would look forward to hearing about them. So we'll go ahead and have the roll call, please.
Councillor Moffat.
Present.
Warden Danielson.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Burton.
Present.
Councillor Ryle.
Present.
Councillor DeVolen.
Present.
And Councillor Schell.
Present.
Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda for today? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Schell, thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Schell. Be it resolved that the January 27th, 2021 Halliburton County Council agenda be approved.
All in favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Okay, hearing none. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes from December the 15th, December the 16th, and January the 11th and the 13th? Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that the following minutes of Halliburton County Council be adopted as circulated. December 15th, 2020 inaugural meeting of County Council, December 16th, 2020 regular meeting of County Council, and the January 11th and January 13th, 2021 special meetings of County Council.
All in favor? Carried. Well, next item of business is a pleasure to hear our new Deputy Warden make his oath of office. Welcome, Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you.
Deputy Warden Kennedy.
Thank you. Declaration of office then. I, Patrick Kennedy, having been acclaimed to the office of Deputy Warden of the Council of the Corporation of the County of Halliburton, do solemnly promise and declare that I will truly, faithfully, and impartially exercise this office to the best of my knowledge and ability. I have not received and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof for the exercise of this office in a biased, corrupt, or in any other improper manner. I will disclose any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. I will be faithful and true bear allegiance to Her Majesty Elizabeth II, and I make this solemn promise and declaration conscientiously believing it to be true and knowing that it is of the same force and effect as if made under oath.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. We look forward to you working with us, and I look forward to working with you. I wish we could have heard your declaration in person.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I look forward to this next year. Exciting times.
Okay, we move on to delegations, and first up is Michelle Corley and Hope Lee from the to talk to us about the Housing Target Program. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Warden and members of Council.
You recall in 2019, the 10-year housing and homelessness plan was adopted, which included a separate approval of the affordable housing targets that were set. The affordable housing target set specifically for the county aims to create 750 additional affordable housing units between 2020 and 2029. During 2020, we initiated the first intake of the Affordable Housing Target Program, a program where various types of proponents have an opportunity to express interest in creating affordable housing units and then seek incentives and funding to help support the creation of these units. The report before you outlines the recommendations from this first take from the steering committee, which aims to create 47 affordable housing units. These recommended projects have gone through the application process of the Affordable Housing Target Program and have been reviewed by various technical staff from both the county and local municipalities, as well has been brought forward to the steering committee. This report specifically highlights and seeks approval of the county's contributions towards these projects through cash contributions, a rent supplement commitment, and the waiver of some planning fees. These projects will still go through the required planning and development processes as required. Overall, the first intake of the Affordable Housing Target Program has seen well-rounded interest from various proponents, such as nonprofit groups, to private residents, and from the local housing corporation, Kawartha Lakes Halliburton Housing Corporation. In addition, the project types demonstrated a really nice variety of projects, including new rental construction, a multi-unit rehabilitation, and secondary suites, as well as rent supplement. Furthermore, the various incentives that are recommended to support these projects are also a really good reflection of the financial support from all levels of government, from local municipalities, the county, the city of Kawartha Lakes, and also federal and provincial funding support. That concludes the deputation, and thank you very much for your time this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for Michelle? Hearing none. Hope, did you wish to speak to, or are you just here for support?
I'm just here for support.
Okay, well, if there are no questions, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Burton. Thank you.
By Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Burton, be it resolved that the January 27th, 2021 report Affordable Housing Target Program recommended project be received, and that subject to the necessary bylaws and agreements being forwarded to Council for approval and the successful completion of such planning and development processes as may be required, the recommended applications received through Intake 1, COH 2020-001 of the Affordable Housing Target Program, providing a total of 47 affordable housing units in the County of Halliburton, be supported as described in Table 1 of the report, and that the following municipal incentives falling within county responsibility be approved. KLH Housing, a cash contribution of $360,000. That's a one-time capital contribution. KLH Housing Rent Supplement, $72,000, which is an annual contribution. KLH Housing Official Plan Amendment Fees, $1,000, which will be waived. Places for People, Consent and Advertising Fee, $1,300, which will be waived fee. And Places for People Site Application Fees, $1,200, which will be a waived fee.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. That was easy. We didn't take up too much of your day.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Kyle David, who will be giving us a presentation on our insurance renewal.
Good morning, Council, and thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning. Glad you can hear me. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't having any technical difficulties. This morning, I will be presenting your 2021 insurance renewal. My name is Kyle David, and I work for Aon, who is the county's insurance broker. If we can go to the next slide. I think Mike's controlling that.
Okay, go ahead.
So on the agenda for today are your 2021 renewal terms. I'll discuss some of the coverage changes that the coverage lines that are driving the premium change, the changing marketplace, and the hardening market in the insurance market globally, as well as the municipal insurance market here in Ontario. Speak specifically to public sector insurance in Canada, propose a conclusion, and propose any questions if you have them. So in 2021, the renewal terms came in at an overall increase of 15.74%. The terms remained similar to previous years with changes outlined in full detail in the proposal. What's been standard throughout all coverage lines is that there's been exclusionary language added to make sure that it's clear in the way that they are providing coverage or not providing coverage for COVID-19. With some of the coverages in the past, there's been ambiguity on how they would be picking up exposures for contagious diseases, and now all the insurance companies have obviously seek clarity in that regard. One of the most significant changes that we've seen in the past year has been the excess liability market. Your limit remains unchanged at 50 million overall, but the structure of the layering has changed from being 5, 20, 25 to now it's 5, 39, and 6, which is a bit strange, but overall the limit has remained unchanged. But that speaks to some of the changes that have happened in the excess market that I'll discuss in a future slide. Medical malpractice has been excluded except for first responders, fire, and police. That's an issue that's been seen in the excess market where they're not seeking to include medical malpractice unless those people are deemed to have been requiring medical malpractice insurance, like for nurses and doctors. And the EMS and long-term care operations have been excluded excess of $5 million coverage. So that's the primary liability. And the other significant change is that the automobile deductible has increased from $5,000 to $10,000. Next slide, please. So there's been significant changes, and I just think it's important that we discuss the changes and why they're occurring in the market now. The increase in premium comes predominantly from the excess liability, the automobile, and the cyber insurance coverages. The excess liability market has hardened significantly. We've seen insurers leave the space, and typically the insurers that are participating in the space have a lack of capacity. And given the economics of supply and demand, the lack of capacity drives an increase in prices. Those who have capacity are seeking to best utilize that capacity in terms of a profitability. The next significant change was the automobile schedule that included classification changes in the addition of 10 vehicles. So overall, the rate, you would say, on the automobiles changed very little. However, the schedule changed quite drastically. And lastly, the cyber premium. Cyber insurance has been under a lot of pressure in the municipal space after some highly publicized losses across the country. So 2 factors impacted your cyber premium specifically, those being the wider market where there's been a lot of claims in the municipal space here in Canada, and both locally in the county as the revenues that drive one of the premium calculations have increased by, I believe, 16%. So that's a significant factor. Go to the next slide. As I've mentioned in the past slide, the market is hardening quite drastically. After several years of what we consider to be a soft market, the market is now hardening as insurers seek to regain profitability. This isn't unique to municipalities. This isn't unique to Canada. This is something that's happening on a global basis. As I mentioned, it's cyclical in nature, so historically soft periods have caused this historically hard period. In a hard market, you see, as I mentioned, decreased capacity, increased premiums, stricter underwriting guidelines, which just means that they're going to ask a lot more questions than we have of the team at the county, and a reduction in coverage and sublimits. And then the inverse, when you're going into a soft market, there's an increased capacity, increased competition, broadened coverage, increased limits, and decreasing premiums. So as mentioned, the market has been historically soft in the municipal space in Ontario through a lot of competition, and now it's been hardening with both the global factors as well as local factors here in Canada, as insurers have chosen to lead the space domestically and internationally. Travelers being one of note that has ceased their municipal underwriting operations. Historically, they've had a team of municipal underwriters that have now disbanded and fulfilled other roles within the company. So that's difficult. We've seen Lloyd's of London, which supplies a lot of the liability coverage for all of the competitors in the space. We've seen a drastic tightening at Lloyd's of London, which has caused increases across the marketplace. And that is in turn why you would see some changes to the layering structure on your program. We can go to the next slide. And we're going to talk a little bit about public sector in Canada. So as I mentioned, has been very profitable insurers, and that's why you'd see insurers leaving the space. There's not very much interest in new entrants coming to the space, as they would see it as being an unprofitable segment. And a lot of these reasons are reasons that you may have heard at other conferences and through discussion with other municipalities. So the insurers would look at municipalities as being a large, complex risk, whereas they would have low premiums for what they consider to be appropriate. So that would be driven by large claims, the risk of joint and several liability, and in the county's case, the large geographic area and the many kilometers of roads, driving a fear of large road losses, which we've historically seen in municipal risks. So 3 to 5 years ago, to be competitive on an RFP, you had to be coming in well below their expiring premiums to even have a chance. If you were coming in at the expiring levels, you wouldn't typically have a chance at winning that proposal. Now what we're seeing is it's won by the least significant increase in most cases. And whereas we used to see 3 to 5 RFP submissions in the past, now we're seeing 2 or 3. So you'd be very fortunate to receive 2 and 3 responses. We've seen many where only the incumbent is providing terms. So it's drastically changed, and part of the difficulty in presenting terms that aren't favorable to the municipality and yourselves is that the market changed so rapidly, rapid hardening, as opposed to a gradual slope where we're seeing incremental increases. We've seen a fairly drastic spike in recent years, but there is a glimmer of hope that this will be the worst of the hardening, and that post-COVID and once a more normalized state is returned to, there should be more stability in the pricing. So those are the points that I wanted to make today in presenting your insurance renewal. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Kyle. It's unfortunate that we are experiencing some pretty serious changes in our rates, but it appears that there's little control that we have over it. We just hope for a change in the future. Are there any questions coming from council on the presentation? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to accept the presentation? Councillor Moffat, Councillor Kennedy.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that the County of Halliburton 2021 insurance renewal presentation from Kyle David of Aon be received as information by Halliburton County Council.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Kyle. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
So next up is the approval of reports and recommendations from the Committee of the Whole. Could I have a mover and a seconder on that resolution? Councillor Roberts, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that the recommendations from the January 13th, 2021 meeting of the Halliburton County Committee of the Whole be adopted by Halliburton County Council.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, nothing under joint accessibility. So next up is our planning department update.
Good morning, Warden and members of County Council.
Good morning, Charlesy.
Good morning. So the first item in the Planning Department update is just to bring to your attention a 90-day comment period through the Environmental Registry for the province of Ontario. At the end of last year, some changes were made to the Ontario regulations related to excess soil management. And what the government is seeking to do is update their record of site condition guide. This is used by municipalities for councils in making decision, as well as staff in reviewing applications. And this comment period is available, and I brought it to County Council's attention. We don't see very many record of site conditions as part of planning applications, but when we do, they're usually large and somewhat significant. We've had some in Highlands East as well as Dysart, and going forward, we may see more based on some of the changes to the soil requirements. And when people think of records of site condition, they usually think of brownfields, so redevelopment of, say, gas stations. And what we see in the County of Halliburton typically is records of site condition required for previous light industrial uses, as well as older recreational properties where the people in the past had not used municipal, or maybe municipal waste sites weren't available, and we see small former waste sites on the property. So that's typically what we see in the county. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention.
Do you have any questions or concerns that you want to raise about that? Like, this would be an opportunity for you to make any comments too as well. Any concerns?
From what I've read, no. Usually the requirements are on the applicant to bring it forward, but historically, I can say the last two that we have had have been significantly expensive for applicants in cleaning up their property and the soil, and having the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Parks approval completed. It takes a lot of time. I don't think the changes to the regulation are going to make that worse or better, quite honestly.
Okay.
The next item is a ongoing topic of discussion amongst a lot of larger municipalities. And I've included in my report 2 links to some letters that have been written to the provincial government. And what is seemingly happening, and I'll speak in my next item to how it's impacting the County of Halliburton, is due to the public health situation over the last year. There has been some kind of a pent up people wanting to do development, but did not make applications. And if you'll remember last year, there was a pause in certain Planning Act applications. And so there was some uncertainty out there with regards to moving development forward. And what a lot of municipalities are seeing is a large number of various applications now coming forward. And if we think about, especially at your local municipalities, if you had a number of, let's say, zoning amendments that all came in at the same time, you'd have to hold those public meetings all together, which could take up an entire morning. And then the next decisions would be at your next council meeting, which again could take up a significant amount of time. Now, I'm not saying the County of Halliburton is in the same position as, say, the Hamiltons and maybe even Muskokas of the world, but we are seeing an increase in applications. And so what the proposal is for the provincial government to allow municipal councils to delegate some authority to heads of planning departments to make decisions, to reduce the number of applications, not only before councils, but to speed up the timeline where official plan policies are being met, and good land use planning is taking place. There's currently in our Planning Act the ability of councils to delegate authority to staff for things like consent applications. And so this would just take that the next step further. I wanted to just, again, bring it to council's attention. I don't know where that's going to go.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Just as an example, yesterday at Dysart Council meeting, we had a zoning change, and so we held our public meeting in the morning. It's like we do at the county. It's a meeting within our meeting. So we have to adjourn our regular council meeting. Anyway, nonetheless, there was a lot of comments from the public. So I wouldn't want to delegate that authority just to staff. It's up to council or however you do your planning committee to hear the concerns and comments from the public to make sure that that they are being heard. So I'm not really sure where that would fit at the local level or what specifically we would be doing.
Go ahead.
And so the process would be outlined in any change that's made to the Planning Act. It's not seeking to remove that public process. It's after that process takes place, that decision-making process. I hate using the word process, but the public participation would still be before whether it's a committee, each municipality does it differently, but it's the end result that would not have to go back to council again. Kind of taking that one step out. Any other questions?
Are there other questions? So this would be something that we would give consideration to at some point in the future.
So if the province did make the changes to the Planning Act, again, with all delegation of authority, it's the decision of the council, right? So not just county council, but each local municipal council would be able to make their own determination. And maybe it's yes for minor variances and consent and no for official plan amendments. And there would be hopefully that option as well. I will keep you posted as it moves forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Carry on.
And so, as I mentioned before, there's a bit of a pent-up development energy out there, which is a good thing. And so you'll see on my report, I note that there were 3 new consent applications deemed complete in the last month. In the last week, just to update this number, we've completed 9. So we have 9 applications in addition to the 3 just for consent. And I've also received a rather large proposal for a plan of subdivision and condominium. And I have another one likely to come in the next week or 2. So they are starting to roll in, which is great. But we are going to start seeing, I think, additional applications, which will exceed what we had I'd say not just last year, because 2020 was an odd year, but 2019, if we look at that, I think we'll be ahead of those numbers as well. So just to keep you informed. And then Schedule A is an update on development applications currently in progress and projects that the planning department is working on. And Schedule B is our GIS update and reports. So you can see what items are ongoing there. And the last item is climate change consideration. So myself and Corey have, told council that as new items and policies come forward from whether it's the federal government or provincial government, that we would keep you informed. And so the provincial government is looking for, again, some consultation on what they're calling their hydrogen plan, so that coming out of the current public health situation, we can build forward in a green way and look at green options and how that may or may not impact not just our economy, but local municipalities and residents alike. And the hydrogen, I put the link here in the report. The hydrogen plan is there for review and comment. And again, just keeping you informed on some changes that may be coming.
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Charlesie. Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Councillor Moffat, Councillor Kennedy.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that the January 27th, 2021 staff report on planning department activities be received for information by Halliburton County Council.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks again. We'll see you later.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up are a variety of administration reports. First up is pre-budget approval for hot mix and surface treatment. So I'm assuming that Sil is going to speak to that.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, County Council, Madam Warden and councillors. I have one report asking for pre-budget approval for staff to release the request for tender for the hot mix and resurfacing tenders. And they are outlined in the 2021 draft budget. There's a couple of benefits to this. The major benefit would be to obtain competitive pricing in early tendering, and as well as the flexibility to get in early in the contractor's scheduling as well.
Any questions on this request? Councillor DeVolen?
Not a question, but a comment. As a former corporate purchasing manager, it's lovely to see this come forward in January, so that what I think is going to be a very busy year in 2021. Hopefully this puts us ahead of the herd, Silva.
Yeah, we're anticipating a lot of contracts this year to be released because of last year. Some municipalities cut back on the quantity and how much they released last year. So,
Any other questions? Could I have a mover? Oh, Councillor Moffat, sorry. You have a question?
I do, thank you. I was just scrambling to look at something that's later on the agenda. Should we be waiting till we review the capital projects before we approve a pre-approval? Or is that not connected? I'm sorry, I'm trying to put on glasses and read really small type on a page that's later in the meeting. I could be wrong.
I suppose that we could defer the resolution until after we have that discussion. Although I think there's been some pretty careful work gone into to planning for roadworks, and I guess it wouldn't delay us going forward if we waited till later on in the meeting. But what's everyone's thoughts, or any other thoughts on that? Do you want to wait, or be prepared to pass a resolution at this point in time? Councillor Roberts?
I'm prepared to pass a resolution now. We actually have not approved our budget at Dysart, but we gave pre-approval yesterday for our capital roads projects for the very same reason. Get out there, get the tenders out there. So I would support that. I would move this resolution as written.
Okay, Councillor DeVolen, did you have a comment?
I'll just mirror my Councillor Roberts' comments. This an RFP doesn't obligate us to anything.
Okay, so would you second the resolution? All right.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor DeVolen. Be it resolved that Halliburton County pre-budget approval for staff to proceed with the release of requests for tender for the 2021 hot mix and surface treatment resurfacing projects as outlined in the 2021 draft budget.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Sil. Next up is the community paramedicine long-term care funding. And we'll be hearing from Chief Waite. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Warden and members of council. I just wanted to bring to your attention some actually good news about the community paramedicine program. Presently, we have a fairly robust community paramedicine program. We have a full-time employee where the funding is received via the LIN. Just prior to Christmas, we were contacted by the Ministry of Long-Term Care regarding a 3-year project to expand our community paramedicine program. So it was a fairly short timeline to submit a budget and proposal. We did put that together and have submitted it. But I wanted to bring to the attention of council that is in the process. It doesn't mean that we are guaranteed that we're going to receive it, but it is being considered at this time. So I just wanted to bring it to the to council's attention that we have submitted this proposal, which could see up to 4 additional sort of full-time positions for community paramedics over the 3-year period, which the funding would come in this case directly to the county from the Ministry of Long-Term Care, and it's 100% funding. So if we're successful and we get approval to proceed, then I will come back to council with a second report for permission and your consideration to operationalize the plan.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts, then Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Burton.
Yeah, this is really good news. You know, especially in an area like ours, a rural area where transportation is an issue. Community, this paramedic program is a great way to get the service to the people, as opposed to people having to get to the service. But I do wonder, and obviously you can't answer this question right now because it's a little bit far off, but just in terms of our own capacity, like office space and where vehicles would go, where people, you know, sort of the logistics, if you will. I just, we don't have space that I can picture. So I'm sure that you don't have to answer that, but those are some of the questions that are going on in my head right now. Is like, how's this going to work at our end logistically?
Yeah, great questions, and I've thought of them as well. It would, in the budget, I did request an additional vehicle. Where that would park all the time, we'd have to work around that. I know other areas that are doing this, they're having the same issue. A lot of times vehicles are parked outside. The second piece to it is that we have to make sure we have enough staff to do it, to provide staffing for our 911 calls prior to adding additional community paramedics. So it could result in an additional hire of paramedics to help to create these positions of full-time community paramedics.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I wanted to find out, excuse me, from Tim a little more about the language that says that they're funding community paramedicine programs to provide services to individuals who are waiting for placement in LTC or are soon to be eligible. You know, from the beginning of this program, it was working through the physicians of the GAIN team to provide services to vulnerable people who just needed a little look in at their homes. So I just want to be sure that the way this language is sitting, that it doesn't lead directly into any limit of service for anybody in the community who may need assistance staying at home. So if somebody is determined that they're not on a long-term care list and they have no intention of going into long-term care at this time, is that in any way going to translate into the paramedicine program not being able to assist them?
I don't see that, because it also includes individuals who may be approaching the need to be on a long-term care list. But we do utilize physician referrals now. Just from, you know, some individuals need to be seen on a fairly regular basis if they've had a medication change, for example, and then they may end up going off the list. So I think when we look at it, the big picture, that certainly providing services to individuals who aren't presently on the long-term care list, but are in need of support, it still fulfills the function of the community paramedic and the long-term care goals, and that is to keep the person at home longer, keep them off the long-term care list longer, and give them a good quality of life while they stay at home.
I wonder if you can just do a bit of a deeper dive on checking to make sure that there won't be any limitations. It sounds from what you're saying like Carol's concerns are covered, but I'd just like to make sure before we you know, enter into expanding the department that we won't be facing any shortcomings. I've got to say that I attended a presentation on community paramedicine at the Roma conference, and it's this service is really being looked at seriously by the province and how it can help the overall health system. So it's good to see that they're putting funding in place for it. Councillor Burton, you had a question?
Thank you. Yeah, it is good news. And I suppose my part of my question was answered, but Tim, what happens after the 3 years? Funding's gone. We've hired 4 paramedics, got a new ambulance. Will that be on the, then it'll be on the dime of the county?
That's an excellent question, and certainly I've considered it. I mean, the hopes would be that after 3 years, they see it successful and want to continue it, but there is the risk that at that time, the funding could discontinue. There is language in the collective agreement for layoff language so that individuals would basically move from full-time back down to part-time, depending on seniority. But yeah, certainly that's a decision at that time at the 3 year mark. If they were just discontinuing the funding, what council's position would be at that time. The single full-time community paramedic we have right now is base funding, so that is ongoing funding. It doesn't have a closing window.
Thank you.
Councillor Rael?
Yeah, Tim, I was just wondering, first off, would we be handling these people on a scheduled basis or on an on-call basis? And secondly, sounds like could it be something similar to the programs that are currently being run by VON and people like that?
Most of the clients that we have now, they're rostered. They're seen on a regular basis. This is to enhance present programs in the area. So we wouldn't be the only people visiting these clients. There's occupational therapists, physiotherapists. There's probably some nursing individuals attending these residents. So it's sort of, we're part of a team that are providing, additional care to individuals in the house. And we just have to, it's kind of blending all together, because I brought a report to council here at Committee of the Whole, and that was a different funding window. That was one-time funding for high intensity support for members in the community who are either are on the crisis list for long-term care, or actually they are coming out of the hospital and going back home, even though they need to go to long-term care facilities as they try and free up space for the surge of possible COVID patients or just other patients coming from, as you know, they might be moving patients from the GTA to our area in order to accommodate the additional COVID patients they have in their area.
Any other questions on this report? Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report for information? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receives the report on potential community paramedic expansion with funding from the Ministry of Long-Term Care.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Chief Wade.
Thank you.
Okay, we now have a number of financial reports, starting with the financial indicator. And we would look for our treasurer. Good morning, Madam Treasurer.
Good morning, Madam Warden and members of council. So the first report was the 2019 Financial Indicator Review. Every year, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing reviews each municipality's financial health using key financial indicators. Historically, we've always had 2 that we were in the moderate range and not in the low range for risk, and they were the reserve indicator and the asset consumption ratio. So in 2019, and actually I should also tell you, normally we receive this information in September, October, and this year we didn't receive it until January. But in 2019, so that's not a misprint, we did actually meet the range that the ministry was looking for the reserve balances. That being said, a lot of our reserve balances have capital projects that were deferred, so potentially that might change the ratio for 2020. But So the one indicator that we are still working towards meeting a low risk on is the asset consumption ratio. Now, if you recall, in 2020, we did spend an additional $3 million on capital. So we do expect that that will improve that ratio for us going forward. So hopefully for 2020, we'll have a much better, or closer to the ideal for those ratios. Is there any questions on those?
Any questions from council? Okay, could we have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Councillor Shell, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receives for information the January 27th, 2021 staff report on the 2019 financial indicator review.
All in favor? Carried. Next is council and committee remuneration and expenses.
Okay, the Municipal Act requires that we provide the information on an itemized statement on remuneration for council and council members and committee members by March 31st. It includes all items that we paid directly or that we paid on behalf of all councillors or committee members. So that schedule is attached to this report. You may be wondering why the numbers are very similar from 2019 to 2020, and that is largely due to the increase of any savings were offset by increased number of meetings for the emergency, the EOC committee meetings, which if you recall originally were like daily, and then we've now moved since then to weekly. So that's basically it. The report is attached. Are there any questions on it?
Any questions? Councillor Moffat?
I apologize. I should have emailed Elaine previously. I would like some follow-up on what I ate and where I stayed, because we haven't left our homes in months. So I'm a little curious as to.
Yep, I can send that to you.
3860. So if you could let me know what I did, I'd appreciate that, because I don't think I've been anywhere. So thank you.
Actually, I'm glad you raised that, because I would have the same question, under expenses that, like, I can't remember going anywhere for so long. It's incredible. So yeah, I'm sorry, I should have asked in advance as well, but a little clarification on that would be great. Councillor Roberts?
Yeah, we did, some of us and I had registered also for the annual conference, but it was right here. So yeah, Carol, it's kind of funny when you see Councillor Moffat, when you see meals, cinnamon buns you had at home or something.
This would have included the Roma conference in 2020, though, which was in Toronto.
There we go.
I can provide all those details. Is it just for the three of you that I need to do that, or for everyone?
Does that clarify it for you, Councillor Moffat, or you're looking for the details?
No, I apologize. I'd forgotten. You see, again, in this time and space continuum, it would have been Roma this time last year in Toronto. So I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so could I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Councillor Roberts, Councillor Burton. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receives for information the staff report on the 2020 council and committee member remuneration and expenses, and further that the report on the 2020 council and committee remuneration and expenses be hereby approved.
All in favor? Carried. Next up is our investment report.
Okay, so this is the annual investment report for 2020. If you recall, we have all our investments in the local authority services one investment fund. They have qualified staff that spend a lot of time with the investments, and nothing for us is locked in there. So it gives us flexibility. We are required through Ontario Regulation 43897 to make sure that we meet the eligible investment requirement, and they ensure that we do. So they, by one investment, ensures that we do. So we also make sure that we have met all the legislated requirements through our county's investment policy, which you have approved a couple of years ago now. The goals of the investment policy are listed in the report, just for as a reminder. And then in terms of analysis, we have our investments in several different types. We have a high interest saving account, we have a money market portfolio, we have universe corporate bond portfolio, and we have an equity portfolio. We did much better than expected for 2020. Initially at the beginning of 2020, things were looking a little dismal. They reduced the high interest savings rate by quite a bit. But all in all, the market rebounded by the end of December, and we actually made $84,442 in 2020 on our investments. So you can see in the chart under financial impact that we have initial investments of 2.4 million. And since we have invested those, we have made 144,000. And of that 144, 84 was made, we made investment income of 84,000. Any questions?
Any questions on that report? Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Moffat, Councillor DeVolen.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor DeVolen. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receives for information the investment report as at December 31st, 2020, and further that the investment report as at December 31st, 2020 be hereby approved.
All in favor? Carried. Next is the borrowing bylaw and annual repayment limit report.
Okay, every year we bring forward the borrowing bylaw for council for approval. And we document how much we have in terms of borrowing in the county. So the chart that's in the report shows that we still have the 2015 infrastructure loan, which was for the Minden EMS base. It will be finally paid off in 2035, and it shows the interest in how much we pay each year. The other loan that we have is the 2020 infrastructure loan. That was the $3 million over 10 years. There is a typo in the report. The final payment is due November 1st, 2030, not 2025. So all in all, we have debt that's still outstanding of $4,341,530. And those repayment of both interest and principal for annually are $456,675. That is well below what the ministry has allowed for our annual repayment limit. So the Ministry of Municipal Affairs has calculated, and it's also attached, our annual repayment limit, and they would allow us to have repayments of $3,698,654. So that still leaves us room of $3,241,970. So I guess the good news is we have lots of room to borrow more money if necessary. And I know that in some cases we were looking at that for housing and for roads and other capital assets.
Any questions on this report? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receives for information the staff report on the borrowing bylaw and annual repayment limit, and further that the report on the borrowing bylaw and annual repayment limit be hereby approved.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is a recommendation on the RFPs for community safety and well-being. And I'm assuming that that's you, Mr. Rutter, that you're going to speak to this.
I will. As council will remember, we did release an RFP for a consultant to develop a community safety and well-being plan. That request for proposal resulted in 6 proposals being received. Those ranged in price from $11,200 US dollars to $86,000, and that's a Canadian dollar figure. In addition, there were some minimal disbursements for many of those. They were evaluated by the steering committee, which is the heads of council. Those it was evaluated based on experience and qualifications of the proponent, their response and understanding of the scope of work and pricing. All of the, we did receive a number of quality submissions. I should say it was actually really a good exercise. But Strategy Corp's proposal stood out for a number of reasons. Their overall approach to the work, an engagement plan with stakeholders that will be tailored to meaningfully secure input and buy-in from the local community. That will include small consultation sessions with local municipal councils and CAOs. They have done very similar projects in other communities. They have significant experience and qualifications on the project team. That includes actually developing the legislation that enabled the community safety and well-being plans and the new police, the detachment boards. They had a previous experience with small and rural municipalities, including a service delivery review for Halliburton County. As a result of that, the evaluation committee is recommending that it be awarded to Strategy Corp.
Questions or comments? Councillor Moffat.
Just to comment more than anything, on the Roma concert, it was not a concert, in the Roma conference in the last 2 days, I sat in on the sessions that were related to the safety and well-being plans as well as the detachment boards. And we have our work cut out for us, particularly in the development of the detachment boards. So the safety plans are meant to inform the development of the detachment board. So we have some complicated processes ahead of us, and I look forward to what Strategy Corps can bring to the process, because it's interesting days ahead for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a really good meetings with the heads of council and a good process to get to where we are today. I mentioned it at our Dysart Council meeting yesterday, and I'm just wondering, in terms of process for funding, it's recommended here that we pay 50%. So maybe I need to ask our clerk or treasurer, do we need resolutions at our local councils to fund the equal portion of the 50%? I did mention it yesterday, and mention also that we would take it out of our cannabis funding reserve, but I don't know how. Just so, Mike, if maybe you can answer that.
That would be up to each individual municipality. If what I will do is send a letter to each of the clerks, which will go to your council, I assume, saying that it has been awarded this way, and the funding formula is as it is, and then you can take it from there and do whatever approvals you require.
Okay, thank you.
So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report and recommendation? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council received the January 27th, 2021 staff report detailing the evaluation process for the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan request for proposal, and that the project be awarded to Strategy Corp at their quoted fee of $69,750 plus disbursements and applicable taxes, and that the local municipalities be notified of their revised share of the costs for the project.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, next is the 2021 Health and Safety Policy Statement Commitment.
Warden, this is an annual requirement where council are required to review and sign off. Obviously, those signatures will be pending. Normally, we pass it around the table and council sign. That's not possible now, but it is important that that review be recognized by resolution.
Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Councillor Shell, Councillor Roberts.
Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council adopts the 2021 Health and Safety Policy Statement, the 2021 Health and Safety Duties and Responsibilities Policy, and the Workplace Violence, Harassment, and Sexual Harassment Policy as presented in the January 27th, 2021 staff report.
All in favor? Carried. And now to address the county's procedural bylaw.
Thank you. This seems like it has taken, it's gone on forever. I think council, this is the third time you've seen it. But this incorporates a number of changes from the former standing committee structure to committee of the whole. There were a number of changes. Council did request a review of the weighted vote, but no direction was received on that. I think it also incorporates a change, which I think council has asked for a very long time on our regular agendas, which will remove the Algonquin land claim and include a more generic Indigenous issues category. As I say, I think the review, this is like the third time you've seen this draft. So,
and it also includes, I think, the that the clerk would assume responsibility for drawing a name out of the hat.
Oh.
That I encountered again.
Thanks so much.
I just want to comment that it's not really a criticism. I should have mentioned this before, but sometimes I don't know, you call it a red marked version, so that we could actually see the changes, is always appreciated in any case when we're looking at changes to bylaws.
Fair enough.
Are there any questions on the procedural bylaw? I think it's good to see some of these changes come into place. One in particular, I would think Andrea would agree. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Roberts, Councillor Kennedy.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receives for information the January 27th, 2021 staff report on updates to the county's procedural bylaw, and that staff be directed to present the bylaw for adoption.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks for your work on that, Mike.
Much credit to Michelle Moore, actually, the deputy clerk. She did a great deal of that work.
Well, pass our thanks along to her then.
I will.
Reports and minutes from external boards and agencies. We've got a set of minutes from the health unit. Any comments or items you'd like to bring forward, Councillor Roberts?
So I'm happy to take questions on those minutes, but in the world of COVID, that seems so long ago. So I'm just going to update on a meeting that we had last week, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. We are acting MOH, Dr. Ian Gemmell was on our meeting, and he's doing a fabulous job communicating with our local press, well, all like throughout the health unit district. And he's doing like weekly press conferences. So really making sure that information and access to information is getting out there. I'm really happy about that. We had a presentation on the vaccine program and the rollout, and HKPR is ready to go like every area. The only issue is shortage of vaccines. So that was really good to know. And I'm telling you, the logistics and all that has gone into creation of the plan, and then it has to get submitted to the ministry, is an enormous amount of work. So really proud of the staff at HKPR we are ready to roll out. And our long-term care homes will be all vaccinated, including here in Halliburton County, by February 15th. So that was great. I'm just thinking if there's anything else.
Are you aware of any delay in the vaccinations? I know that we heard yesterday that there had only been, I think, 700 doses received.
Well,
go ahead.
Not in our district per se, just as we are all hearing in the news that there is a supply chain problem. So, you know, and it starts at the federal level, so it's beyond our little HKPR, but that we have been assured in several calls and calls with other ministers, and I'm sure if you guys were at Roma or if you heard anything there, that it is particularly the long-term care homes are ready to go. So I haven't heard a supply or a problem with those high-risk groups. The other thing is I asked a very specific question that has been coming back at me, which is the numbers in Halliburton are reflective of the people with permanent addresses here in Halliburton. And I asked very point blank, is there a problem of positive cases here in Halliburton where their primary residence is somewhere else. So it's not accurate. I was assured that this is not a hotspot. There is not, there are a few that are probably staying at their second home. And so, yes, there are probably more people in the county than are accurately reflected, but it is not a problem. Those health units talk to each other. So I think there's a bit of a thought out there that it's people who are staying at their second homes, it's a huge problem, but I've been assured that it's not. So I did ask that question. And I think that's everything, but if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. Just to the last point Councillor Roberts made, I asked at Algonquin Highlands last EOC that very question and was similarly assured that any tracking that's being done is being done. But I said to our health unit rep who was on that meeting, I said, but if in the world of cell phones, if somebody is at their cottage, but they live in Guelph, and the Guelph, that area's health unit calls them on their cell phone, they don't know where they are. And so I appreciate the assurance that there aren't folks at their secondary places who may be positive, but in reality, we have to accept that there's really no way to know that. They can't know that in the world of cell phones.
Go ahead.
It takes a level of honesty and people answering those questions. As we know, people don't always answer the questions correctly, like who have you come in contact with, etc. But they are told with a phone call, this is how you quarantine, this is what you're to do. They make sure that they have the supports needed. So we have to trust that people are being honest. But I did feel or was getting the impression that people were thinking that, oh my God, it's a hot spot here because everybody's at their cottage. And it's according to our health unit staff, it is not a problem. So although, I think it's really equally important to know that we are so far not out of the woods. You just look around in our neighboring municipalities, just, Barrie, I think I heard of, and in Lindsay, in our health unit, there's another major outbreak in a long-term care home. So, we just have to do what we're continuing to do, stay home, stay safe, save lives, or whatever the line was from the province.
Well, and I think we all have to keep the message sort of going that people need to remain diligent, that just because there are low numbers or appear to be low numbers doesn't mean that there aren't some other cases out there. And we can't back away from good practice at this point because we're nowhere near out of hot water. Go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
Lastly, just a small thing. Doug Elmsley was appointed chair. He was the chair previously, but we elect the chair every year. He sits on the CKL, and many of you know him. So he's our chair again this year.
Thank you. Anything from point in time, Councillor Schell?
Thank you, Warden. Actually, we met last night and there was a couple of things I just wanted to bring into this meeting so that the public could hear. One of the things was we were given a run through of the operational scorecard and performance measurement framework. And Point in Time is actually really doing well with their wait times, even during COVID. And I also think it's important the public's aware that the Point in Time staff are still meeting with families in person using COVID protocols because, within the county, there are some people, well, first of all, not everybody wants to meet virtually and not everybody has the capacity with their internet or, the accessibility to that kind of thing. And as county council's aware, the Are You In campaign is underway for getting internet to all children. And they're looking to raise $180,000 and they've currently raised $28,400. So those were the two things, the long meeting, but those were the two things I thought that would be important to bring to the public.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Schell? Okay, I did speak briefly to some of the Warden's Caucus activities. We will be having our next meeting in March, at which time we'll be looking at what our priorities for the year ahead are going to be. And I suspect that they will remain pretty much the same as those items that we addressed at the conference. If council would be interested in seeing the briefing notes from the delegations that we made, I'm sure that we can make those available. to you if you'd like to receive them. Okay, we can do that. Next is the Halliburton Joint Social and Housing Services Committee. Any news there, Councillor DeVolen?
We meet on a quarterly basis, which is not this month.
Okay. Nothing on professional recruitment, I don't think. Okay, next would be really for our consideration the minutes from the Library Board of November the 10th and December the 8th. Any questions on them? Okay, I guess we have a resolution to cover all of the reports in this section. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Moffat, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receives for information the following: the minutes from the December 3rd, 2020 Halliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit Board of Health meeting, and the November 10th, 2020 approved, and the December 8th, 2020 draft minutes from the Halliburton County Public Library Board.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the Land Division Committee report for the year end. Wait a minute for our planner.
Good morning.
Good morning again.
Thank you very much. So the Land Division report includes at Schedule A, the decisions following our December 14th, 2020 Land Division Committee meeting, which was the last meeting of the year. And so those applications are listed there. And Schedule B to this report is a summary for 2020. And we can see that applications were not significant throughout the year, as I spoke to a little bit earlier. 2 points that I thought were interesting, though, is if we look at new lot creation, we only had 3 in all of 2020 as applications for development. And the majority of the applications are actually for lot additions. So people moving land from one property to an adjacent property. And then right behind that would be rights of way and easements. So recognizing access to specific properties. So the chart is just color coded down below, and you'll notice also there's 0% in land leases. Some years we see a lot of land leases, and the past 3, as you can see on the chart, we've seen none. So just some interesting statistics. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions on this report? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Moffat, thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that the January 27th, 2021 staff report on Land Division 2020 year-end report be received for information by Halliburton County Council.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next up are external boards and agencies and reports. Anything to bring to us on the Ontario Good Roads Association? Councillor Burton.
Thank you. I don't really have a report this morning, but we're busy working on our conference, which is next month. We have appointed some of the different committees and different workshops that are going on, and I have actually the pleasure of introducing Minister Laurie Scott and Mr. Steve Clark.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to that.
that's good. 2 of the best people to be introducing. Any questions for Councillor Burton? Okay, next is a report on the election process for EORN board members, which is actually part of the EOWC membership. So I would look to Mike to speak to that.
I have included for council's information the process for election. 2 of the members are, or 2 of the seats are designated for sitting members of the Warden's Caucus, and 3 of the seats are for people who have been a member of the Warden's Caucus, so but who currently sit on a county council. So That is, in the past, Councillor DeVolen has sat on that board in that category. The election, I believe, will take place in March, but it requires a resolution of support for anyone who is interested in filling those seats and standing for election. And I believe Councillor DeVolen is still interested, but I will turn that over to you, Warden.
Would you like to confirm your interest to continue on that board, Councillor DeVolen?
Thank you. Yes, it's, I'll be honest, it's probably the thing that gives me the most joy of anything that I do at this time in municipal politics. And for those days that we all have challenges, something that I think for the future, although it's not fast enough, the benefits are gonna accrue to us all.
Well, it's certainly at the top of mind in almost every category that we talk about, everything that we do. And I think we would be pleased to see you continue on the board. We know it's a special area of interest for you. And right now we need as much support as we can get, particularly when it comes to Halliburton County. Do we need a resolution for that? Okay, I just recognize Councillor Royale first. I think you had a question.
No, I didn't have a question. I was just going to nominate Councillor DeVolen, and hopefully he is going to take it.
Councillor Roberts?
I will second.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, Councillor Ryle, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council supports the nomination of Brent DeVolen for a seat on the EORN Board of Directors.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Brent. Much appreciated. Do we have anything on poverty reduction?
Actually, we do. I met with the group this week after what seems like a long time since I've been with them. There were a number of things going on, most of it that are in our view, ULINK's research projects, community safety and well-being I brought up, partly because as we went through the RFP process and as we go forward in that, a lot of the people that are involved with whatever the outcomes sit around that table. And I kind of asked the question again, but forcefully on the record. And Councillor Moffat and others of us, this is a creation that we kind of are charged with responsibilities, but there's a lot of people that are going to populate these decisions that are paid in answer to other masters. And I had two questions to them. First of all, the group or ministry that you work for, have they told you anything yet? And when you inevitably run into a situation that what your daily masters are telling you and what this newly created mechanism we have are at odds, what are you going to do? Anyways, I wasn't looking for some direct answers at the time, but I wanted to put it up front with them to realize and pay attention to what's going on and to challenge who they work for, how this is going to work. And as Councillor Moffat, I'm sure I had another session that I was sitting in on, not the one that she mentioned today, but sitting with this bunch, collectively, I think they have very little idea. I think that to bring it foremost to their mind was helpful, but there's a lot of head scratching going on. There was reports back on all kinds of other things at the group that are going on. Tamarack City's Reducing Poverty annual gathering that took place in November, Fenian Falls Housing Initiative, Just Recover Ontario campaign, a lot of stuff that we're perfectly aware, but it's a table that what and how what we're doing, bridges out of poverty, the getting ahead, employment, those from employment and education working groups, obviously lots of things to do with COVID, housing, things that are going on in dozens of spheres, and at least there's conversation and people are made both in the city of Kawartha Lakes and the county of Halliburton of some notion of what's going on with each other. So does it make huge decisions in its own right, but it's a collecting and a meeting place for that. But I also challenge the bunch that half of what goes on there, to me, is part of the objectives of community safety and well-being. And where will we go as a group or a body? Does the raison d'etre for this group continue, or does the lion's share of it plug into the community safety and well-being? And because I said I don't like silos, and I see this is a great meeting place, and with what's going to be newly created, what I don't want to see is these two bodies that don't have any formal mechanism. And if one rolls into the other one, then I mean, I can live with that.
Thank you for bringing up that concern. I know that that's something that the Councillor Moffat raised in early days when we started talking about this plan, and it's a bit disheartening to hear that nobody's really heard anything about how the reporting will roll out and who responds to who. Councillor DeVolen.
I'll take one exception to that. Obviously, because I had conversations later last year with Rachel, there's an exception there. She's fully aware of what's going on and whatever, and I think is a good input and will be helpful in steering this bunch in terms of what the outcome. And I thought I'd better point that out, because I would be terribly remiss, and she would have every right to chastise me, because she definitely knows what's going on.
Well, that's good to hear. Any other comments or questions about that? Okay, I guess the next item is our February calendar, and whether there are any questions, additions, errors. Hearing none. Next up is a report on internet access for youth as a response to the delegation that we heard recently. Did you want to speak to your report, Mike?
Sure. The intent was to provide a little more background information that I believe council requested. The report was really less about identifying a number and more about identifying some considerations that you may want to take into account to come up with a number. We did show the estimated cost for a full year, the fact that it could be different. The demand could be very different depending on the type of schooling. It may be different depending, this school year versus next school year. I guess I did lay out a couple alternatives, but my intention was really not to put those out as options necessarily, more just how those considerations could be woven into into your decision on coming up with a number should you choose to do that. So I think unless there's questions about the report, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I think that we were sort of unanimous in our desire to help in some form. I know this is definitely outside of our normal scope of considerations, but it's obviously a big enough concern that most of us felt we should do something. I would look to comments from members of council about the direction that you feel we might take. Councillor Moffat.
I'm not sure at the moment what direction I think we should take, but I think it's very important that whichever direction we choose, that we include in the resolution a bit of a position statement that because it is outside of our normal scope of business, that the resolution include a comment or a statement that we believe the learning of that education for youth in our community is a top priority during the pandemic. We have already last year been asked by various groups, including local businesses who are struggling, looking for financial incentives or opportunities. And we didn't want to weigh into that because it's that you open the floodgates, and as much as we'd like to give everything to everyone, we can't. So I think it's very important that we, at the front end of whatever decision we make, that we just make a statement that acknowledging that it is outside the scope of business, but that we deem the education of our youth to be a priority during this time.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. I would like to see that too, because It is outside of our normal scope of business, and I don't want to see us, I mean, it might be something that we do decide to continue, but at this point in time, we're not making that determination, and I like that suggestion. Councillor Kennedy?
I'll start the discussion then, and I guess the auction, for lack of a better word. I'd like to suggest $25,000, which would be support for 5 months based on their hybrid model, roughly. And that would take it through the end of the school year. That's an initial discussion start, I guess.
Thoughts on that suggestion? Councillor DeVolen?
It seems as a reasonable number that gets through the school year. This is symbolic and a show of support of something that's not normal and clearly not our responsibility, but we're in this as a community, and I think that sounds like a reasonable amount of money to achieve that objective at this time.
I like the idea that it would take us through to the end of the school year, which is a reasonable time frame to consider. Councillor Ryle, then Councillor Roberts, then Councillor Shell.
Well, I think that, you know, if we're stewards of Halliburton County, which I believe we are, then I think the stewardship of our future is in our children. And for us to invest $25,000 in the future of our community is just not an unreasonable ask. I think it's a great number. Thank
you for that. Councillor Roberts, I know you had put forward a recommendation at the end of our last discussion, so I'm interested in hearing where you're at now.
Yeah, so that was sort of for the larger amount of a 1 month thing, but I've had some time to ponder it, and I should have asked the question, but as often happens is after delegation and, you know, a day later you think, oh, what about this? Again, it's a logistics question. So I want to support this. Obviously I did 2 weeks ago as well, but so we get internet provided to that home. We all know with getting internet providers, sometimes billing is a month behind, or sometimes it takes that you have to, you know, jump on the phone to make sure you cancel it on a certain date. I'm just wondering about the logistics of actually we're funding this program. How are we going to provide an internet service to somebody's home for X number of months and then we pull the plug? You know, I don't know how it works, and I'm sorry that I didn't ask the delegation at the last meeting. I do want to support it. So maybe that's with a bit of a proviso that we get a little bit more detail on how the program rolls out.
Councillor Moffat?
I don't disagree. I would hope that whatever we do, I kind of like the lump sum, and it shows our intent and our support, and then let point in time figure out those logistics. But I don't disagree with just knowing, not to get into it and micromanage it, but just to have point in time come back and tell us how they're going to do that, and if there are going to be any challenges along the way.
Yeah, I would have looked to point in time to take care of the logistics and provide us with some reporting about how the funding was used. Councillor Burton, did I see your hand up? Oh, sorry, Councillor Shell.
That's okay, no worries. I like Councillor Kennedy's idea of $25,000 donation and agree with everything that everyone else has said about you know, letting point in time kind of come back to us with how it was spent and how it's being allocated, rather than us trying to figure it out.
Okay, any other comments or concerns? Did you have time to add some wordage to the beginning of the resolution?
I have added some wordage, but I will let you tell me if you think it is what you're looking for. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receives for information the January 27th, 2021 staff report on internet access for youth, and that Halliburton County recognize that even though access to education is not a core responsibility of county government, Council recognizes that it is a high priority during the public health emergency. And finally, that Halliburton County Council authorize a donation of $25,000 to be paid from the Safe Restart Funding Reserve.
How's that sound? I have a mover and a seconder? Oh, a question, Councillor
Just a,
Roberts?
well, just and a further, and that maybe we could get a report from point in time on the whatever you want to call it. You can find the words because you're good at that. The if the point in time can follow up with a report, that's all. And then I will. So maybe Deputy Warden Kennedy wants to move as he proposed.
I would move that.
Okay.
That's the
So
amendment.
moved by Councillor Kennedy, then seconded by Councillor Roberts. Councillor Moffat.
Did you need me to read that again, or?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I'm sure it'll go towards making some families happy. Next up is a discussion about the recent announcement by the Ministry of Tourism, Sport and Culture on a new influencer campaign urging people to stay home in Ontario. Did anyone wish to speak to that? Was Amanda going to speak to that at all, Mike, or we're just receiving this for information or discussing what it is we think we should do?
We can certainly bring Amanda in if council would like. I know that a number of you participated in a conference call or a meeting with the minister, but we can certainly bring Amanda in if you would like.
Well, I would look to have a bit of a discussion about the steps that we would take to participate in this. I know that that it was suggested that we all get involved to the greatest extent we can. So I'd seek thoughts on that. Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, so the invitation was to mayors across the province to participate in the, I guess, the webinar about this initiative. And using celebrities or people of note, apparently including elected officials in various communities, to extend this message. I did send Councillor Roberts a note during the presentation to say, are we supposed to get people on our own, or are we supposed to tell the ministry who we think in our community might be able to help, and then they go get them? We didn't really come up to really with an answer on that. And I wondered at the outcome of that if there was an opportunity for revisiting what I'd suggested in the first round, which is maybe the 4 mayors get on a screen and each say a little blurb and then have a little stay home initiative. I guess that's part of the conversation. Is we've been asked to participate in this campaign of encouraging people to do the right thing, and exactly what would our role be? We're going to do it collectively as individual municipalities. Who are the people of influence? I guess that's all the conversation.
Other thoughts or ideas, Councillor Roberts?
Yes, it was an interesting call, and we had a really moving presentation by a fellow named Jeff Hopper, who's broadcaster in Ottawa, and told his story of his father passing and him contracting COVID, and it was really real. And I think that's why they're doing it through the Ministry of Heritage, Tourism, Culture and Sport, or whatever it changes to with the Minister McLeod, is because they have the tools and the social media and the ability to sort of get the message out. Although this isn't a health thing, they're the messaging tool. So they're doing it through Destination Ontario. And I think, like we brought it up at Dysart Council yesterday, we're bringing it up today. They are encouraging you to use the hashtag #StayHomeON. So I'm not sure if we could be doing more, and I think we probably have the ability to do more and to share our story and get that out there. So don't know see what Amanda has to say.
I like Carol's idea about the heads of council getting together and doing a message. I think that's a good starting point. I think that we've got people right here in Halliburton County who might be interested in speaking to that. We could, I'm not sure what the cost would be, but do a couple of very short clips and include them, in our social media posts and on our website. I think we could possibly do that as well. Amanda, had you been putting some thought into this?
Yes, so we received the heads up from the ministry, I guess, about a week and a half ago. So it's a two-pronged approach for us. Since last Friday, when we launched the campaign, we've been using the hashtag throughout all of our tourism channels. We also launched 2 videos, one on Friday, one on Saturday, specific to Stay Home Ontario. And we will, the other approach is that we have been asked by the ministry just to share their influencer content. So we've been sharing that through the county channels where appropriate. So it was our understanding through our calls that they were finding the bigger influencers that we were to share. For example, the Rick Mercer video that was released on Friday has already received like 45 million views. So they're quite happy with that and that the message is reaching far and wide. And I think from a tourism perspective, our approach with the short videos that we've done will continue. But I don't see anything wrong with a message from council going out through the county business channels.
Councillor Moffat?
Where are those videos and can we see them, Amanda? Like if there's initiatives going out that speak to this.
Yep, they're shared through our channels. I can definitely send you links, but they're available on the My Halliburton Highlands YouTube channel and also on our Facebook page and Twitter.
Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, and the influencer campaign is meant to target the 18 to 29-year-olds, where they're seeing the greatest rise where they're seeing the greatest rise in cases is in that age group. And so I guess the idea was to find people of that age who could influence other people of that age to encourage them to stay home.
So, Councillor Roberts, sorry.
That's okay. No, and yeah, I found it kind of funny that they were using Rick Mercer to target 18 to 29-year-olds because really he's our demographic. But anyway, I thought for the provincial government, they might have got somebody who was 18 to 29 to be the influencer, but maybe they're still working on different celebrities or sports personalities or whatever. I also think that we are very fortunate here in Halliburton County. We, even on a good day, the streets roll up. You don't see a car on the main street of the village of Halliburton at like 8 o'clock at night. So we don't have the malls. We don't have large areas to gather even. So we're kind of lucky we are able to stay home because there's nowhere else to go. But what I've been trying to encourage, and what I did in my mayor's report for Canoe, was to highlight some of the things right here, like the sculpture forest and our sidewalks and our walking paths in Head Lake Park, and the different cross-country skiing and all the different things that there are to do to try to put a positive spin on it. That stay home doesn't mean to literally just only inside your house and get depressed, because it's pretty easy to do. So to try to put that, like I say, a positive spin on stay home can look like this, and maybe make a snowman in your front yard or something silly.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, the influencer campaign, I think, is a good idea. A couple of questions here. I'm just wondering, how many languages are you going to say it in, Madam Warden? You're going to keep up with our premier? And,
no.
Second, I think we know that February is the worst month of the year for depression, and that our accompanying message should be visit a friend, or by phone or virtual, or I know we can't do it personally, but we need to really do an extra effort.
Amanda, I see your hand up, or saw your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to speak to some of the activities for our first stay-at-home video that launched on Friday. We did show like walking the dog, we showed some cross-country skiing, we showed some outdoor activity. So it was like go out, exercise, and then basically stay home. And then on Saturday, we launched the takeout version of it, where we promoted a lot of local food and said, go out, eat out, like get takeout, and then come home again. So we've been promoting as much as we can in terms of activity that's allowable and safe, and then encouraging people, of course, then to go home. So that's kind of been our hook on those videos. I will share the links right after this.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. So to the suggestion that the heads of council put their heads together and do a message, would there be support for that? Oh, I'm seeing 4 nods. you know, it's a matter of people's faces appearing on screen or speaking. I mean, I guess there's, you know, we would need to talk about exactly what it is we want to do. Does somebody want to maybe spearhead that? Or should we have a little, or should there be a little meeting to talk about it? Councillor Moffat?
What I'd proposed in the spring was that there just be a little text written, which I'm happy to take a stab at. 4 mayors' faces on the screens, and we each say our little bit, and then whatever comes. I don't know whether we want to make it into a video, Amanda, or just do like record a Zoom. I don't know. Maybe Amanda could help us out with what the logistics are to get that message out without making it into a make work project.
Councillor Roberts?
You know, we're all have cell phones, and most of them take pretty darn good videos. We can just do like a 10-second video showing something we're doing, staying at home, and submit it to Amanda, and she could compile it. As that works, it might be the easiest. Just a thought.
Yes, I can have one of our. It would have to be a video editor compile it for us, but yeah, we can do that for sure.
I'm thinking, 10 to 12 seconds max per person, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when it's 40 to 48 seconds.
How does that sound to everyone? Okay, I'm just not quite sure how to coordinate this. Forgive me for looking for comments and suggestions. Councillor Moffat.
I think Andrea Roberts has captured it, and I think it's just a matter of the 4 heads of council doing their own video of whatever it is they think they want to do that sends the message, and send it to Amanda. She'll put it together.
I think that I like that idea, but I also believe that there should be sort of a common thread in the message rather than just everybody saying something. Councillor Moffat?
So really the direction could be as simple as to just continue on with Councillor Roberts' idea is each of us needs to do a little video saying, what am I doing to stay at home and keep people safe? For Andrea, it might be she's a big walker. It might be walking or maybe skiing in Glebe Park or something. For me, it might be photographing birds. And this is what I'm doing to stay home and keep myself active. But everybody's got their own thing.
Yeah. Councillor DeVolen?
Yeah, and I've built my own private and grooming a trail through the bush, so I already know what I'm going to use.
Do we all have the technology to do that? Yep. Okay. All right. Well, if we could all agree to do that within a set period of time, go ahead, Amanda.
It could be very, very simple too, where it's even less than 10 seconds. Like it could be, I'm Councillor Moffat or I'm Mayor Moffat and I'm doing X to keep Ontario safe. And then we just go to the next one and the next one and the next one. So it doesn't need to be onerous by any means. I think the shorter, the better. So.
Okay, so can we all submit that, let's say maybe by next Monday? Sound reasonable? Okay. So thank you, Amanda. And if you've got any comments or suggestions that you want to make, let us know. But we'll all commit to getting something to you within that time frame. So next up, back to something a little more serious. Well, not to say that this isn't serious, because it is. But hopefully we'll all have a little bit of fun doing it. We'll discuss the draft budget, and we've got a really good chart detailing capital projects and special operations to look at and comment on. Councillor Moffat?
Could we have a break?
Sure. I was, maybe that's a good idea. I was thinking that we would just before close, but by all means. So if we could have a 15-minute break, we will reconvene at 11 o'clock. That sound reasonable? It's been a long week and we're only halfway through.
Okay, we're live.
Welcome back, everyone. We'll now proceed to discussion on the capital projects and special operations that form part of the 2021 budget. I think we were all sort of in general agreement, maybe not, that it's a modest increase that we're looking at, based on the challenges that we've got ahead of us and probably we'll have more of as time goes on. And thanks to the special funding that we've received to help us through some of these tough times. I'm not sure if you want to go through this line by line or if you just want to raise areas of concern that you've got or items where you might see that we could put the expense off for now. I know that the only item that I had in particular was the development charges study that we're proposing to have done. We're pretty busy in the planning department, and I'm not sure that we want to get into development charges at this point in time, given the challenges that we've got. That might be one area that we could consider. That's a $100,000 saving. Anyway, I look for comments. Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you, Madam Warden, on the last page. Questions about the transportation $50,000 transfer again this year. That discussion still goes on annually, and I wasn't at the last budget meeting, so I'm not sure what was discussed at that regards that one. The shoreline preservation bylaw staff at $126,000 to start April 1st. I don't know if that's actually reasonable, or is that just can be left in as a placeholder, for lack of a better word, but that was a question that I had.
I would think that given the most recent reports we received with the target date of July, for the bylaw, and whether we're even able to achieve that might be one area where we could consider. I'm thinking on the money for transportation. I think the goal is to continue to contribute, so we're in a good position should we find an option to offer to the public. But to me, reserves are very important, but I mean, that's one area that we could consider. Mike, did you have a comment on either one of those?
No.
Councillor DeVolen.
Yeah, just a general comment. The discussion we had at Minden Hills, but just the phasing and whether it's shoreline or whatever, is since we staff originally put these numbers together, it has become clear that some things we may do or roll out may not roll out at the same month of the year that we intended. So we have made some decisions there, whether some things we maybe could start, at the beginning of the second quarter may be pushed to the beginning of the third quarter, and those sort of things just across the board. That's not removing or not necessarily going ahead with initiatives, but I just think it's a reality with us coming out of lockdown and a whole bunch of other things, that the phasing of this, that we stretch some of these things where it's possible, just at least another quarter or so in the year, Madam Warden, if which kind of goes along the line of what some of these other comments.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I wonder around the position of the economic development person that we have discussed as part of the service delivery review. There was just the announcement of the next round of modernization money that will be application based. So I wondered if there was an opportunity to alleviate some of that 100,000, if the CAOs are going to talk about maybe using some of that money for something like that, or something that's related to a collective effort, because the announcement did indicate not necessarily preference, but did indicate that they were looking for collaborative efforts that were cross-border. So might be some opportunities there as well.
Good point. Councillor DeVolen.
In kind of in the same vein with that announcement, again, to look at some of these things that we're funding, that is technological improvements, whether it's software or other, whether with this offering of money pot that's there, there's things that we have in this budget that are potentially eligible, or if there are more dimensions that could be added to the ask, knowing that that pot of money's there that we might consider, so that we're not spending 100 cent dollars on our own in some of these things. And just again, that's kind of a global comment given what that announcement was.
Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Royale.
Thank you. And to Councillor DeVolen's point, I think the takeaway is something else from the service delivery review about internal communications and making sure that message go back to each of our councils and our CAOs. They do meet every week, and I'm sure that they're already ahead of us on this, but to make sure that if this group of people agree that the new round of money should be a collective effort for one of probably many projects, that direction come or suggestion come from this table back down to the lower tiers for conversation.
Councillor Royale.
The only concern I've got is in the event that we have good, worthwhile projects, and I don't want to pick anyone out because it looks like all of them listed are good capital expenditures. But in the event that the funding that we're hoping to get or does not come true, and we do take it out of the budget, then we got the problem of now what do we do, because we no longer can fund it in any way, so it's not going to be there. So I have no problem with removing things from the budget. That makes good sense. But if we're going to take them out of the budget, we got to go on the idea that we could actually be removing them from being done. So it's just a comment, no more, no less.
Okay, Councillor Moffat.
My suggestion was simply that we keep an eye out for those savings, not that we remove it from the budget, that there's could be some efficiencies found through that collaboration, because I agree with Councillor Ryall that we, when you take something up and out something, cross your fingers, you may not get it, and then you're behind the 8 ball. I guess my further question is, this was provided, it's a terrific report. It does offer some, what's discretionary and what's not. I guess the bottom line is, does council support the draft budget as presented? Because it doesn't sound like there's an awful lot of interest in going through this detail and taking anything out. You had mentioned the development charges, and I wondered, because committees aren't meeting, if we felt it necessary to find any money that, and even though I think I was on the committee, the Augmentative Communication Board, committees aren't meeting to design that anyway. They could later in the year. Further to what Councillor DeVolen said, that you keep things in because something could change that allows that project to go forward. So are we hearing anybody interested in changing the draft budget so far or not? That's not, because I'm not hearing anything.
The only, we did hear 3 items that we need to agree on or disagree on, raised by both myself and Councillor Kennedy. With respect to the transportation money, personally, I would like to see us continue to contribute to that, so that we're prepared if there's an opportunity to offer a service across the county. But we may feel as a group that contribution could hold. So thoughts on that, yay or nay? Councillor Roberts?
Yeah, I think, and I asked this question at the budget meeting. So for Deputy Warden Kennedy's comments, is I said, does that need to be in? But I think it's best to leave it in. And in the event that there is an opportunity, whether it be a rideshare type program or anything, we still need to probably have some financial contribution to it. And I did ask the question, what point is the reserve at a cap? Like, we haven't really set that. Like, is the target 200,000 and we're at 150, or we do need at some point to be talking about those things. But so that's on the transportation, and even in terms of the development charge study, putting it in our budget today, they're still open for conversation about if we even want to, is that committing us to then go out and get a development charge study? So that's one I do still question, that 100,000.
Actually, that was my only main concern, was the development charges study. I'll go to our CAO and then back to Councillor Moffat.
If I could just provide a little clarity on the development charges study. we had $100,000 total expenditure. 40% of that was funded from reserves. So in fact, you would only, if you remove that, you would only be saving $60,000, not the 100 that's noted. So sorry, Elaine's got some additional information.
Not to disagree, but it also would mean though that we don't spend the amount that we have in reserve, so we would still have that to utilize later.
Councillor Royale, then Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I have a funny feeling that if we're going to get into any kind of transportation, that number is going to be quite large when it comes to fruition. So putting $50,000 in is not necessarily something that requires us to spend it, but it also gives us the ability to have that planning option going down the road. With development charges, I have a tendency to agree with Warden Dennelson on this, and it's something that we could probably do, but is it needed to be done right now? And do we have the resources to basically pull it off in terms of the amount we need? And I also agree with Elaine in that, yeah, it's 60,000 out of the budget, but it's $100,000 out of taxpayers' pockets.
And do we have the appetite to do it as well? I think that's something that we need to consider. Councillor Moffat, and then I think Councillor DeVolen.
Thank you. I know we'll be talking more about it this afternoon, but I'd like us, if we are going to leave these things in, or if we can make them a little bit discretionary going forward. I am not convinced that 2 personnel for shoreline bylaw will be enough when and if that moves forward. And I'd just like us to acknowledge that if that happens, as with any budget, we can slot monies in different places, but we still have the discretion to move them around if need be. And so I wouldn't want to find ourselves short in any category, including the shoreline bylaw staff line. So maybe the development charges money stays in there, even if it's only 60 grand, because it's possible we could need it somewhere else, because we don't know. Going back to what Councillor DeVolen said, so much is changing and moving. There's a huge pent up demand, as the planner said, for planning applications and work there. So I think as long as we all acknowledge that we retain the authority to move monies around inside the budget if need be, then we can stay as broad as possible to accommodate all the changing landscape.
I don't disagree. Go ahead, Elaine.
I'm sorry, just to speak to Councillor Ryal's comments on public transportation. That reserve, if we keep moving money into there and we decide on what the cap might be, it would pay for the first year. And then I believe the other years after that would be paid for by the federal gas tax money.
So there would be a point at which time we could cap those contributions, just not yet.
I guess I would just say that my understanding is that gas tax funds 50%, and that would be the maximum. So my recollection, and it has been a long time since I looked at it, the low end of the annual cost was $190,000. So I think if council did implement a program, it would be phased in. I think you should probably, the annual cost would be closer to 200,000 or above, and not, so there would still need to be work done on that.
Okay, and so any other comments or areas of concern? So I think we've kind of whittled it down to keep development charges funding in or not. Let's see, maybe a show of hands for keeping it in. Okay, quit bobbing. Okay, that looks like we're in general agreement to keep it in. And we haven't finished all of our deliberations, but I like to thank Elaine and Mike for coming up with this chart. It does simplify things quite a bit, sort of targeting our primary areas of concern, and rather than having to continue to rifle through the binder. We love our binders, but this does make our job easier. Go ahead, Mike.
So if I might, then I guess what I would suggest is that we bring to committee of the whole a revised summary. There's some other changes. I think the insurance and some other things that have happened since, and we will provide that most up-to-date number and look for council's direction for, and bring, I guess, if there are no other changes from there, then we would be looking to bring a budget bylaw and other things to the February council meeting.
Sound reasonable to everyone? Okay. Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Councillor DeVolen. Councillor Moffat, thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receives for information the draft 2021 capital projects and special operations project updates.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, that concludes the public portion of our meeting. We would now move into closed session. And I would look for a mover and a seconder for us to go into closed. Councillor Burton, Councillor Shell, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council enter into closed session as per section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended for the following reasons: litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, notice of potential litigation, and personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and that is to deal with the resignation.
All in favor? Carried. So we'll maybe have a brief 5-minute pause while we switch over from open to closed.
Okay, we're back live.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So we do have one resolution coming out of closed with respect to the resignation from the library board. Could I have a mover and a seconder with respect to that? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Roberts.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Halliburton County Council receive the resignation of Ruben Mon from his position as a board member with the Halliburton County Public Library Board with regret, and that the CAO be directed to prepare a letter thanking Mr. Mon for his service.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, next under bylaws, we have the bylaw to allow the purchase of a tandem axle truck with dump box. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that bylaw? Councillor Moffat, Councillor Shell.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that bylaw 4029, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Curry Truck Center for one tandem axle truck with dump box, material spreader unit, and plow and wing, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. The next bylaw is to authorize an agreement with Dr. Haley Hatch. And our thanks to our recruiter for her hard work on that. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Kennedy.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that bylaw 4030, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Dr. Haley Hatch, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. And next, a bylaw with respect to our procedural bylaw. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that bylaw 4031, being a bylaw to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of council and related committees, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. The next item is a notice of motions. Councillor Kennedy.
It's not a notice of motion, but I do wish to advise council that I will be tabling a motion at this afternoon's special meeting. I've been given permission by the warden to circulate my motion to members of council following the conclusion of this meeting so that members may have a chance to review in advance of that meeting.
Okay, thanks for that notification, Pat, and everybody have a look at that resolution between now and our next meeting, if you would. Next is our confirming bylaw. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Burton, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that bylaw 4032, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the January 27th, 2021 meeting of Halliburton County Council, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Okay, that concludes our business for this meeting. If I could have a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Moffat. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that the January 27th, 2021 meeting of Halliburton County Council be adjourned.
All in favor? Thank you, everyone. See you at 1 o'clock.